Welcome back to the channel. Thank you all for hanging with me on this Sunday. So lipless crankbait is one of my favorite baits because of how versatile it is. You can fish this in all depth ranges as long as you have flat. So if you have fish that are out in 20 feet of water, believe it or not, and they could be on a ridge, a long tapering point, a bar, you can catch them on a lipless crankbait. Now, this is predominantly a shallow bait because you're typically fishing for bass on flats in shallower water. But as long as you have bass that are on flats, you can catch them in any depth range. I think that's very important to understand about the bait. Now, the downside of this is when you're trying to catch fish that are out in 15 feet of water and they're feeding on little crayfish or shad that are this big, you can't get that smaller size lipless crankbait. You got to throw the bigger one. Well, if they're really keyed in on the bait, they're feeding on crayfish that are this big, they're probably not going to eat one that's imitating crayfish that's this big. And the same thing goes for when they're eating big shad, but they're in a foot of water. This is the only size that you can throw in that foot of water. But this is what they want. They want the bigger size. So that's the downside of the bait. But what's very important, especially this time of year when the fish have been really pressured, they've seen a lot of baits and they're really keyed in on what they want to eat. It's all about the retrieve. Now, the retrieve is always important, but in the earlier parts of the year, the pre-spawn, when that water's, around 50, 55 degrees, a regular retrieve, a yo-yo is about all you need. This time of year, I think it's very important to be stroking that bait off the bottom and letting it fall.
They're fixing to start biting. This is like the perfect little pressure drop. I just don't think they're here. Big one. I just don't think they're here. Begging. Big one. Oh, he's got it choked. As long as I don't do something stupid. As long as that line don't break, his ass is caught. Oh, no, he's not. I got him barely hooked. Oh, I'm in trouble. I got him barely hooked. Oh, this is gonna be a miracle. We get this one in. Oh, he's barely hooked. Oh, man, he's hot as a firecracker. Come on, baby. Oh, meat. Dude, look how fat that thing is. Barely one hook. Oh my God, it just fell out. Cha-ching. Dude, that's a tub. Look how fat he is. That's what we've been fishing for. That's every bit of 4 1/4. Dude, look at that belly. That's just wild. That's beautiful.
So this was an area that we had found fish on the day before. What they were doing was they were schooling over a long tapering point, but most of the bass were out off the end of the point where you really couldn't fish for them. Every once in a while, they would slide up on the point or show themselves out in the abyss where you can make a long cast to them and catch them. Now, when we got to them the next day, it was a completely different situation. We didn't see any schooling activity. We saw very little bait flickering on top, and the fish kind of went back into the grass, got on that point, and we're just kind of probably resting or relax, whatever they're doing. They're just sitting there. So for that reason, if you just came through and just gave them the normal wind like we did the first couple times we went around the point, we didn't get a bite. Now, we knew there were a lot of fish there, and that's very important this time of year, is to be confident in what you're doing, confident in your bait, and to work it a couple different ways than your normal. I think in the pre-spawn, when the fishing's good, the fish are feeding, they're pulling up to those spots, and they're there for one reason, and that's to eat. You don't necessarily need to try too many retrieves. Give them a straight retrieve, give them a yo-yo, go to the next spot. There's probably not the group of fish there that you want to be fishing for. This time of year, it's not like that. You're going to have fish that are there. You're going to have fish that have eaten more than they've eaten all year, and they're just sitting there trying to let their metabolism slow down. That's when you got to drop it on their head, basically. So what I'll typically do is I'll take my rod. When that bait hits the water, you got to imagine you're throwing it up on the top of the point. So it's going to land in like 2 feet of water. So that's where the size really comes in big. You know, if you have shad that are all kind of in this general ballpark, then that's when you can really play with all sizes. Now, this is the quarter, this is the half, this is the 3/4. On my hand right now, they probably don't look too different, but when you get them in the water and you get them casted out there, they're pretty different in size. So what I like to do is try to keep it in between the half and the quarter when I'm less than 5 feet of water, because that 3/4, you have a lot of grass growing off the bottom, could be rock, could be sticks, whatever may be down there, you're going to snag. This bait snags up pretty easily when you're fishing around different kinds of cover. That's going to ruin the cast. So what you need to do is make sure that as soon as that bait hits the water, start winding it. Then as it comes down the side of the point, that's when you can slow it down. But the key in this whole situation is whatever cover you're fishing, you really want it stuck to the bottom good, so you can give it that long pop yo-yo to make that bait come up and fall. Now, on other videos where I talked about stroking a jig, stroking a big worm, where you want that bait to shoot up off the bottom, and then when you go to stroke it again, you're going to slap that line on the water, and you'll actually hear that whipping sound, because you want that bait to have no autocorrect when it comes back to you. So when you're giving that stroke motion, it's just that bait's gonna fall naturally on a slack line, and then it's also gonna get popped up on a slack line. So there's no autocorrect where the fish can feel the presence of you. So it comes down, just shoots back up. With a lipless, the way it shimmies when it falls, you don't need to worry so much about that. It's a treble hook bait, so you don't want the fish to eat it on a slack line and swim the other way or swim towards you. What you want is just to keep a fairly taut line. You don't want it to be super slack, because you'll miss them every time. So when that bait falls down, pull. And just the way it comes off the bottom, it's going to do enough shaking and moving to get those fish to bite. It's a really enticing action. So it's not a tough bait to fish. You don't have to worry about the slack line and the semi-slack line. You can keep it on a fairly tight line. You want it to fall, but you can keep it taut. You don't have to worry too much about how slack or how tight the line is. Let it fall, let it go down, pop it up. And if you're fishing hydrilla, fishing eelgrass that's crisp, it will catch and then it'll pop. That's when you're going to get most of the bite. So a lipless crankbait this time of year is so important, because you can come through that area with a spinnerbait, come through it with any other bait, and just not get the bites. And those fish are typically in a place where your numbers baits, like a fluke or a small swim bait, just can't get down to them. They're buried up in that grass, or they're right down there on the bottom, and it's just really a challenge to reel those other subsurface baits that are more so just a horizontal type action and retrieve. You can't get them to those fish. So you need that vertical presentation where it's falling almost like a worm or a jig, but it's imitating what they're eating, a shad. So try a lipless crankbait this time of year. If you know where some fish are, you just can't get them to bite, good luck to you, and I'll see you on the water.